Now in sheath alignment, one of the things we want to do is bring this back down to roughly the horizontal. It makes it a lot easier to move the motor mount around. Now we haven't put the belt on yet because we're not going to until these two sheaves are in alignment. Got a little ways to go here, about 3/4 the way down as I recall. I tried 2/3. I go a little bit further than that. Again, it's just eyeball. It's not really critical. It makes it easier to move this mounter around. Now we're going to go ahead and concentrate on the alignment. Now we're going to do our sheath alignment. For this, we did keep this a little loose. Able to move the shaft back and forth, stick it out a little distance, move it back in. The whole idea is that for belts to ride carefully, it should go from sheath directly to sheath. So that using a straight edge, that's about the path the sheath is. We don't want the sheath to have to go like this or way in like this. It wants to ride directly on the channel over. And the best way to measure that out is taking a straight edge, flattening directly against, fully flatten the sheath, and come out and move for starters this sheath over to match it. Then we do that and shoot off of this one and pretty well match the same way. Notice on this, I'm going to come off of this sheath. You can just about miss that, so we do need to come out a hair more. And once we got essentially that part down, that's when we really tighten this up. I'm doing a hand tighten right now. We'll go right back behind it and do wrench. Again, diagonal, torquing. And then after that, I'm going to realign the camera up this way so you can see the misalignment as far as what I call canting or misalignment. Now the alignment, this gives you a little bit better angle. You're really looking from above, directly in line. Take a straight edge, and the first thing we'll do is shoot off the front sheath and run the straight edge back towards the back sheath until it hits either the sheath or goes right past it. In this case, you see below I just about touched. Now the book recommends, and the book is correct, to touch, when you run this flush against this front sheath, it should touch the back sheath in two locations, the front and the back. In other words, it should be the flat surface against a flat surface. Flat surface against a flat surface. Even shooting off of this sheath over forward, here, using this straight edge, it hits the sheath right here. That means that this sheath is cocked too much this way. So that this needs to move slightly in that direction. Now it lines up. Using this to line back over. This lines back. Now it's perfectly in line. At this point we need to really tighten down. So get our wrenches and very carefully tighten our connections. As we tighten these down as much as we can, and I'll warn you, it needs to be very, very tight. Same as the motor tight. Now typically, if it doesn't quite match, you should twist the motor. Now of course the motor cannot move, in the case of this view, left to right, so the shaft here is what moves left to right. If we ever have to move it, albeit once we do that, really normally on a motor mount we would move the motor slide left to right with slots in the bed plate that run left to right rather than up and down like it does here. But the alignment means we have to be able to shoot off of this sheath, slide a straight edge into the other sheath, and just barely kiss it, and come up with a straight edge from this sheath, and just slide towards this sheath, the back sheath here, and barely kiss it. When it does both, all the way to both edges of the sheaths, then it's perfectly in line. Make sure you really tighten, because as soon as we put a motor on here, or a belt on here, and we turn the motor on, the motor's going to have some torque, this is going to have some torque, it's going to pull these two ends together, because they're sticking out away from this, so you'll have a lever action of force trying to rotate this motor and rotate the sheath together. Watch for that. The other thing about turning on the motor is if this bearing is not really locked into place, it will tend to pull either in or pull out of the bearings. So now we have this basically locked in place, get these bearings tightened, realign, we've done that. The next step here then is to take these pillow block rings and lock them onto the bearings, just like we did in lap 3. As you can see, I have my trusty Allen wrench, and I lock these rings right around the gap. Set there tight and hold the shaft in place. And again, I look for the gap here on this shaft. Put the 2 set screws around that gap. That's the only way you get good clamping. Tighten the bearings down. Now this is a very good place to tighten every bolt, set screw, including this down. Particularly these mounting bolts, these set screws, very important to keep tension down. Because as soon as this motor starts motor up, it's going to pull very hard on this bearing and try to turn it and move it. To keep that from happening, these have to be really, really tight. So I want to emphasize that. Once you have it tightened, then we're going to concentrate on the next step, which is going to be mount the V-belt.